Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Arnold Nerenberg. I've been licensed to practice clinical psychology in the state of California since 1974. And I like to say I've been licensed to walk upon this earth since 1941, so very shortly I'll be 82 years old. It's my pleasure, my enjoyment, and my privilege to present to you the lessons and insights and inspirations of a lifetime. And my intention is to uplift you and your loved ones for the rest of your lives. Let's be part of your legacy, to have more of an impact than just now as you're watching the video. Very important topic. The title of today's presentation is No Excuses. No excuses. Everybody knows what I mean when I say no excuses. You know many people who make excuses, and many of you make excuses. I say many of you. I honestly, for many years, don't make excuses. I really don't. I think I made excuses for myself. Well, I'd like to say I didn't really know what I was doing until I was 70. So the last 12 years, I've not made excuses for anything. And honor demands taking responsibility, facing the truth, and not making excuses. That's an honor, demand of honor, absolutely. There's two types of excuses. It's one where you've made a mistake, made an error, maybe not for the first time either. And you try to cover it. You want to cover it so that people don't find out you made the mistake. And you know what I'm talking about. You don't want anybody to know you've made a mistake. A variation of that is blaming somebody else for it. I didn't do it. The person hadn't done this. That person made that thing. I took care of this. That person did that. I'll tell you why I see a lot of that, this type of making excuses. I want to do marriage counseling. Marriage counseling. We have the wife come in by herself, talk a little while, talk to the husband a little bit by himself, and then bring them together and try to see what the positive things you can put on this. But let me tell you how it goes. No one ever comes in. First, let me tell you, marriage counseling, trying to bring harmony, is not on the agenda when people come in. But people come in for marriage counseling, the real agenda, honestly, we'd have a great marriage if it wasn't for my spouse. We'd have a great marriage if it wasn't for my husband. Husband said, we'd have a great marriage if it wasn't for my wife. Each one comes in with the hope that you'll be able to change the other person because they blame the other person for the problems in the marriage. Each one will not face what they're doing wrong, what errors they're making, or ways they're adding problems, they're adding fuel to the fire, how they're co-creating the problem. If you could just fix my husband, we'd have a great marriage. And here's the list. If you want, here's the list. You get quite a list. You talk to the husband. If you could just fix my wife, she does this and that and the other thing, drives me crazy. If you could fix that, we'd have a great marriage. And here's the list of what she does. By the way, usually the woman's list is longer than the men's. Realistically, so or not, I can't always tell, but it's typically longer. But they both have the list. Each blames the other. No one comes in and says, you know, Doc, I want to improve my marriage, love my wife. I want to find out how I'm co-creating this. I want to be more honorable in a marriage. What I can do to improve myself. I don't want to just blame her. I don't want to make excuses for myself what I've done wrong. 47 years in practice in California and in practice even 3 years before that elsewhere. I've never heard anybody once say that to me, not one time. So you have it. One type of make excuses is not taking responsibility for an error, a mistake, or how you're contributing to the problem. For example, a husband might say, yeah, my wife really gets me angry. She said this and this to me. It really set me off. Well, okay, she's blameworthy there. She did that. But if you added fuel to the fire, you got in and you started screaming, yeah, I did. But she just kept, really ticking me off. She would just talk differently to me. I wouldn't be screaming at her. Well, you've co-created. You've added fuel to the fire by screaming at her the way you did. He just wants to blame her that she got him mad. The same thing with the wife. He got me so angry. Yeah, he did X, Y, and Z. What do you think, with the way you got into it and you were cursing at him? You threw something at him? I wouldn't have done it if he hadn't said that to me. That was horrible what he said. There's no area. The person doesn't want to say, I co-created the problem. I threw something at him. Just missed his head by an inch. It hit the wall. So you co-create the problem? No. If he wouldn't have done that, if he hadn't said what he did about my mother, I wouldn't have done it. Blaming the other that there's a problem going on. Maybe he did say something harshly, or maybe she's overreacting. Hard to say. But her not saying, I have some responsibility. Now, there's 4 commandments of honor. One of the commandments of honor is I take full responsibility for co-creating my reality and my problems. So people who are following the way of honor and the method that I teach, and have so many lectures and websites devoted to that, like honortherapy.com, honormovement.org, which is a free public service one. So many ones on bringing honor into yourself. But one of the 4 commandments of honor, I take full responsibility for co-creating my reality and my problem. Not doing that. Blaming the other. And they're also not blaming the other, basically saying, I'm innocent. I've had a secretary, whenever there's an error, she says, yeah, I made that error, I'll correct it right away. I said, and I always make my secretaries comfortable with errors. I say, look, I probably make 1 or 2 errors a week. I'm very conscientious. I care about what I do. But look, I look at a mistake I made here. I'll even cite an error that I made. Of course, it wasn't life or death. I correct it. So I give them permission. But I've had secretaries never make a mistake, always blaming one of the other personnel. Always. Never, and it's never their fault. The excuse is the other person did it. I know somebody doing life in prison without the possibility of parole. He had this dancing girl. They would get calls. He'd bring it to people's rooms. So she'd go in dancing. And one day she started screaming. I guess the guy was grabbing her. So he came in and he hit the guy about 6 times in the head with a heavy flashlight. And then they left. Well, he died sometime later that day from all those blows to his head. He didn't have to hit the guy 6 times. What the guy did was wrong. He talked about a low life, and the guy was, yeah, for sure in that business, you're more likely to run into these kind of guys. You didn't have to hit him 6 times, 2 or 3 times was one thing, but 6 times with that heavy flash, boom, 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 boom. And the guy died, and they fled the scene. He didn't take a plea bargain and went to trial. He got the worst verdict. A lifetime with no possibility of parole. And he said, otherwise, I've known the guy for years, nice guy. So he was applying for parole after about 15 years. It's been 20 years now. And I wrote a letter on his behalf. Other people wrote a letter. And so the governor sent somebody down to interview him. But he never took responsibility. He never said, yeah, I didn't have to hit him 6 times. I overdid it. He didn't get the parole. He knew people in the prison with him who did get the parole. He didn't. I said to him before he was getting interviewed, I said, you got to take responsibility for what you did. You got to find some way of acknowledging that what you did was wrong. Sure, he went to what he thought was saving the girl. Great. But he hit the guy 6 times and then left. Didn't call the medics, the paramedics, didn't call the police. He just left. Well, life in prison. So he did not want to take responsibility for what he did. Didn't get the parole. He would have stood up like a man and said, you know what? I didn't have to hit that guy 6 times. I got carried away. Or maybe I even enjoyed it, hitting the guy. I'm responsible for that, and I'll never do it again. I feel regret for doing it. I'll learn my lesson. He might have gotten parole, but he wouldn't take responsibility. He made excuses. Now, there's a difference between excuses and mitigation. His going and hit the guy in the head is mitigation. He was protecting the girl. She screamed. I guess he tried to grab her. He wanted more than a dance. He wanted to have a sexual contact with her. So that's mitigation. But it's no excuse for beating the guy to death. It's the difference between mitigation, say this happened, this is the context, makes it understandable, but it's not an excuse. So people are making excuses, and it works against you. In the long run, it'll work against you. You make an error, step and say, I made my mistake. We all make mistakes. I made a mistake. I'm going to do all I can to make sure I don't repeat that error. Now, the second type of excuse making is not keeping your word. Either you told somebody or you told yourself you're going to do something. I mean, I've had employees coming in late regularly. I had a flat tire. My aunt was sick. My dog was sick. My best friend's dog died. I was there to comfort him. My boyfriend's father was getting married in another state, and I have to go fly out to him. I'm telling you, all these excuses. Now, let me tell you something about those excuses, okay? It always comes down to priorities. Always. Just say, well, listen, my work's not a priority. Everything else is more important. It's not a priority. It's important to me, but it's not a priority. Yeah. It always comes down to priority. 95% of the time, that's not a priority. Or you have an insurance company, person's applying for getting the medical expenses covered, and they'll have their excuses. Well, we can't do it. You whited this out. You crossed it out. We can't have whiteouts on there. You have to redo it. So they just keep delaying and delaying. They have their excuses to delay making payments to the person getting the medical attention. They make excuses. The motive is the longer they can delay all payments, the longer they can use their money to invest and do other things. Their money's making money. Excuses. Not keeping the word. Or somebody says, wow. By the way, going back to the marriage situation, I had this couple, they would make love 4 times a week. Well, at some point, it went down to 2. The wife was stressed out, it went down to twice a week. Well, the guy had an affair. I said, well, and she caught him. After 6 months or a year later, she caught him with this thing. And when confronted, he didn't take responsibility. He blamed her. He said, well, you weren't taking care of me sexually, so I had to find comfort and sexual connection with somebody else. And she felt badly, guilty, like, I didn't give him enough sex. I said to her, giving your man with that kind of stress, you're making love with him twice a week, you're taking care of your man. That's on him. But it needed me to tell her. But he had that excuse. Made it an excuse. It's your fault. He said, he had this affair. He didn't deny it because he was caught. But he blamed her. This stuff goes on all the time, where people can say, you know what? Let me man up. Yeah, I did it. It was wrong. I'll never do it again. What do I have to do to make this up to you? Or do you need to just leave me? Whatever you need to do, I'll understand. That's manning up. Now, not keeping your word. People make themselves New Year's resolutions. It's famous. People don't keep to. They don't keep to their word. The word to themselves. So, you know how many people join gyms and never use it or go once or twice? It's probably about 50%. So they basically have excuses. I'm too tired. I got so many responsibilities around the house. I got to clean the yard. There's no end to the excuses of why you're not going to work out. There's no end to it. Why aren't you working out? Really, why? It wasn't a priority. Yeah, it's not a priority. I want to kick back, watch some TV, hang out with the family. That's a priority. That's not. So the things you're telling yourself, it's not that. It's not a. It's generally, it's not maybe it's even 99% of the time. It's not a priority. Look, there are times when something really can't be done, or you have somebody who's late. They come late to supposed to meet somebody at a certain time. They're 20 minutes late, and they say, "Wow, yeah, the traffic was really bad. I'm 20 minutes late." So, did you call the person and tell them you're running late in traffic? No. Well, if you can't keep what you're doing, at least then you're dealing responsibly with the fact that you ran into an extenuating circumstance. Let me tell you about people being late. It's typically a lifestyle. They're not late just for one thing. They just run late. They're late for everything except their own funeral. That's right on time. They die, they're not late. They have the funeral because it's out of their hands. They'll be late for everything. That's a fact. So whatever reason they give, they're late for this, they're late for that, they're late for this, late to turning assignment at school, late to their wife's birthday party, hell, late to the wedding, or whatever, their own wedding. It's a personality trait. They're making excuses. One time or something, one time a year, whatever. But it's just a regular thing. I know you know people like that. Heck, some of you are that person. Making excuses. Because being on time is not a priority. That's why a person's like, yeah, I've got other things I can do. I try to just fit it in. I'll get there I'll get there. It's not the end of the world. I'll be running late. That's how that works. They make excuses. And the person knows there's a lot of traffic. They still didn't leave early enough to circumvent that. This goes on all the time. So you have the two types of excuses, covering your mistakes and your errors. Some people think they're perfect. They really have that going on. I'm perfect, I don't make mistakes. So when they are at fault for something, they can't acknowledge it. Just can't. Because why? Because they're perfect. They don't make mistakes. If you tell yourself that, as bizarre as it sounds, that someone's perfect, doesn't make mistakes, errors, there are many people like that. I mean, we all make mistakes without exception. Every normal human being makes errors, mistakes. It's okay, just correct it, try not to make it again, end the story. No. Even raising children, a kid makes an excuse for why he did something or didn't do something. And you feel like you punish the child more for trying to cover up or blame somebody else. You say, look, if you just take responsibility, it's going to go a lot easier on you. If you try covering up and blaming your brother, your punishment's going to be worse. A lot of parents feel that way. The cover-up is more repulsive to them, more of a violation than the error they made, than the error the kid made. So in terms of honor demands keeping your word. No excuses, keep word. So one of the laws of honor, 25 laws of honor, is keeping my word is my first priority always. Keeping my word is my first priority always. When it comes to excuses, I have this to say to you. Don't make excuses. Give it up. Face you made a mistake. Deal with it. If you're going to give your word that you're going to do something, do it. And if you're not going to do it, let the person know well in advance, hey, I'm not going to do it. And if you're honest with yourself, you may not want to tell it to the other person, whatever you said you were going to do for that person that you didn't do because it wasn't a priority. That's the truth of it. That's the truth. Wasn't a priority. We can get to almost anything we want to get to. If you want it badly enough, you will do it. I'll tell you, you take somebody who's late all the time. Now get this. You say to him, okay, I'm 1,000 miles away. I want you here at 3 this afternoon. 3 this afternoon? I'd have to leave right now. Yeah. And if you show up, I'm going to give you $1 million cash. You can bet your life on it that he'll be there on time because it's a priority. He wants that $1 million. So it can be done by that person. That might be the only time they were on time in their life. That $1 million. It became a priority. Oh, heck yeah, we'll be on time. Just jump on the car and zoom, off you go. That's it. It's always a matter of priority. Always. There's always some truly extenuating circumstance, but mostly that's the reason why it didn't get done. You're going to be taking responsibility for co-creating realities and problems. You want to be truthful with yourself and keep your word. And then face yourself that if you don't, it's because it wasn't a priority. Just be honest with yourself at least. You're not going to be honest with everybody else. Be honest with yourself. That wasn't a priority. Well, it's been my pleasure to present to you No Excuses. So I'm going to turn it over and see what other people have to say. Ivan, what are your thoughts about what you heard? I hear you. Good to see you, Ivan.
Yeah, you kind of cut through some of my shortcomings because I wasn't conscious of the fact that everything that you make a priority, you take it a higher level, more serious. Like for example, I was looking forward to this at 6:30, so I didn't go to the drive range. So I prioritized this over, going to the drive range. So no, I see exactly where you're coming from, and there's a lot of truth.
Now, I want to ask you this question, Ivan. I want you to answer me in all honesty. When you see people making excuses to you, what is your true reaction to that?
Well, for me, I kind of filter through it.
You feel what?
I kind of filter through whatever that excuse
You filter through it.
are really are significant, but a lot of the excuses they keep saying on my day is just excuses.
Sound like excuses. Now I want to ask you something. Does it affect your respect? Nobody respects excuses. I'm not saying you're going to reject that person, but how does it affect your view and relationship to that person if they do that regularly?
It's definitely a blemish.
It's a blemish.
It's a ding.
It's a ding.
Because at the end of the day, they didn't prioritize. Whatever, it's kind of like you go into a wedding and you're 30 minutes away, you leave an hour early.
So it's a blemish. Yeah. I personally find it, I accept it from people. I don't make excuses. I really don't. When I see it in people, a lot of times I don't want to call them on it. I just say, but really, if I respect people stepping up to the plate a lot more. I don't disrespect the person over it, but I'm so used to seeing it, by the way, that it's not really it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's because I just see so much of it. Thanks for your feedback, Ivan. Appreciate it.
I just thought about that as you're talking. Usually, for myself, if I'm making an excuse, I'm lying about something.
If you make an excuse, you're lying about something. Yeah.
If I'm making an excuse, I'm lying about something. I either didn't prioritize it, and that's why I'm late. And I blame it on traffic, or all these other things that we use as excuses. But usually, when I'm using an excuse, I'm usually
lying. Now, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, so you have to find a way to say the truth, maybe in a very respectful way, in a way that won't cause any grief or hurt feelings to the other person. But as you say, for you, usually that means you're lying if you're making excuses, and that applies for a lot of people. You're not unique that way. That goes for a lot of people. A lot of times they're making excuses to cover their lies. Absolutely. And it's more honorable not to be doing that. Yeah. Thank you very much for your input. Really, really good input. Jay, what are your thoughts about the way of the presentation on no excuses?
Well, what you alluded to, what you mentioned earlier, Doctor, is, I take full responsibility for co-creating my realities and my problems. Well, if you make an excuse, you can't live by that. So in my opinion, if you're making excuses, you can't truly live the life of honor.
It's an integral part. Keeping your word, taking responsibility are definitely an integral part of honor. Absolutely right. Yeah, anybody that has honor.
I certainly understand, as far as maybe changing the truth as to not hurt someone's feelings, but don't make it an excuse.
Yeah, you can say, here's some mitigating circumstance. Look, I don't have any excuse. Here's some mitigation that went on. Please forgive me. Yeah.
But if you're making excuses, you can't truly live the life of honor, in my opinion.
No, you cannot. Because living a life of honor involves keeping your word, taking responsibility for when any mistakes you make. That's core to living a life of honor. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else have anything you want to add or ask or say?
Like doctor, I've been at work for 33 years, and I try to be a good employee, coming to work no matter, not being tardy, no matter how tired I am. And that's just me, the whole time.
Now, Elvira, I know you, and you're a very honorable person. But when other people, but what about other people? Do you see them making excuses why they didn't show up?
Oh yeah, they always have. They're the same. Almost a lot of people the same, like calling in sick a lot, and that put pressure on us. People who's always trying to be there for. Lately, it's really a lot of issues.
Yeah. Now, sometimes people are genuinely sick, but a lot of times it's an excuse. And when people are doing that, they don't care what it does to the patients or what it does to the other staff. There's really not a concern about that at all.
No.
And so that's a problem. I mean, you're working in the hospital, and people not showing up is really highly detrimental to the well-being of the patients. So yeah, and it doesn't seem to be that concerned. The whole thing of this kind of excuse making, it's always been there. It might be It might be even growing. It might be. Yeah, very good point, Elvira. And you are somebody that's, can always count on you, always. You're that person. No, you're that person, Elvira.
No matter how tired I am.
You're that person.
There's a really big bad accident.
Yeah, no, you're that person.
I will be late.
I've known you and I know your character. Totally honorable person. Anybody, thank you, Elvira, for that input. Well, it's for my pleasure and my privilege to be able to present to you today's lecture discussion on no excuses.
The sea of destiny is in your deepest struggle. God's will and mine be one, and I wish you well. You are co-creator, respectfully real. There's a way in the valley that turns weakness to steel. We're known through all eternity. From strife we gain power, clothed in grace and love, disciples of honor. All the days of our lives refuse the way of shame. We wish nobody harm, have no one to blame. Your high calling will be done, and pure eyes now glow. In darkness crave the good, like waters from the desert flow. I pledge my love all the days of my life. I pledge my soul to all that is good. I pledge my heart to my brothers and sisters who I join in the light, leave a legacy of honor. We're known through all eternity. From strife we gain power, clothed in grace and love, disciples of honor. All the days of our lives refuse the way of shame. We wish nobody harm, have no one to blame. Your high calling will be done, and pure eyes now glow. In darkness crave the good, like waters from the desert flow.